If you want to learn a new language this year, then it is time to get inspired, because I'm going to tell you about 5 languages that can be life-changing to learn, along with some specific reasons why that you probably haven't thought about. And get ready for a world tour too, because you're going to get an African language, a Scandinavian language, a Romance language, a Slavic language, and a Semitic language. Ready? Let's go. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Olly Richards, and this channel is all about helping you learn a new language quickly so that you can live your best life. And what better way to live your best life than with our first language to learn this year, and that is Swahili. Now, one place where you can go to get a big change of scene is East Africa, because here you're going to find a lot. You've got vast savannas like the Masai Mara and the Serengeti. But not only that, East Africa also has stunning tropical islands like Zanzibar and the Comoros, and their language? It's Swahili. So whether your first flight is out to climb Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, or to go on safari in Kenya, or even to chill out in exotic Zanzibar while you get your hair braided, then you'll have an even better time if you know the local language, because very few foreigners do. Really, understanding Swahili will go a long way to helping you uncover the secrets of African culture. So how hard is it to learn Swahili? Well, actually, it's not that hard. In fact, it's by far the easiest Bantu language to learn. And you'll get your first clue when you realize how many loan words the vocabulary has. Right from the start, you're going to hear English, Portuguese, German, Persian, French. But if you know Arabic, then you'll really have it easy, because about 35% of Swahili vocabulary actually comes from Arabic. And unlike most other Bantu languages, Swahili is not a tonal language, so there's no clicks or silent letters or diphthongs. You just say the words the way that they are written. Which brings me to the next reason to learn Swahili. It sounds beautiful. It's an emotive, melodic language, and if you learn to speak it well, you could really, really blow people's minds, as well as your own, probably.
Hello, jina langu naitwa Leonard Oscar. Ni Mtanzania, sasa hivi niko Mozambique.
So don't underestimate Swahili. It is the biggest African language, and one that many people think will be a major force in the future. But let's leave the African heat for now and move across to the land of the Vikings for our next language worth learning this year, and that is Norwegian. Did you know that Norway is rated the best country to live in the world? There's a really high level of satisfaction there, and apart from the immense natural beauty, citizens tend to be well taken care of. It's politically stable and has a very strong economy too. What's not to love? Whether you're fascinated with Viking history or you're just a complete adrenaline junkie, learning Norwegian is going to serve you well, and here's why. Norway is a land of great explorers, with tons of outstanding leaders in Arctic exploration, many of whom are women. In theory, it is a brilliant place to live and work, but here's the catch. Getting a job in Norway is very tricky if you can't speak the language. I mean, yes, they speak English, but they want you to speak Norwegian. And remember, you're going to be competing with Swedes for a lot of those jobs. If that makes you wonder about Swedish and Danish, well, Norwegian is the best Scandinavian language to start with. Think of it as a stepping stone language. Once you've got Norwegian down, you'll be able to understand people from Denmark and Sweden quite easily. So aspiring polyglots, Norwegian is a winner. But how hard is it? Well, great news. Norwegian is one of the easiest languages for English speakers to learn. For one, there is a huge number of cognates that you can start with. I mean, just read this sentence here. Just by seeing these words, you can tell just how much the two languages have in common, right? And actually, basic Norwegian phrases are very close to German phrases. For example, I'm sure you can guess the meaning of this one. It's quite cool how the Germanic languages tend to overlap. It's also quite cool that Norwegian is partially tonal. It's what they call a pitch accent, which gives it a very lyrical, exotic sound.
Dette blir så rart, men jeg tenker å filme en video hvor jeg bare snakker norsk. Jeg har aldri filmet og snakket norsk før, så det kommer til å bli kjempeuvant, og det føles veldig unaturlig.
But nothing beats Norwegian's untranslatable words. You should learn Norwegian just so that you can say words like this. Okay, I'm going to try and say it. Forelsket. I have no idea if that's right, but this means the euphoria you experience when you are falling in love for the first time. And as for those amazing Norwegian Netflix series, wouldn't you love to watch one of them in the original Norwegian? It's a lot more atmospheric. And if that sounds like a cool idea, please let me know by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel too. Now, the next language to learn this year is, number 3, Espanol, Spanish. Okay, I know. Obviously, you knew that Spanish was going to be in this list. It's in every list of languages to learn, and I have to include it because it is the world's biggest language. But I'm going to give you a few fun reasons here that you might want to learn Spanish, some reasons that you might not have thought of. For a start, you could watch the original Casa de Papel in Spanish, which is so much more entertaining than the English version because you get to hear all the passion and emotion in the different Spanish accents. And for that matter, you could stop missing out on the binge-worthy Mexican Spanish series Desenfrenadas, which is a bit like the cult classic Thelma and Louise, only with loads and loads and loads of really nice Mexican slang. And then there is the food. Latin America is a street food paradise, and in fact if you are on the road in small town Peru, for example, you'll often see hilarious translations on menus, like my personal favourite, non-hot red hot chili. Well, you're probably going to want some clarification before you eat that, and if you speak Spanish, you can get it. Speaking of being on the road, knowing Spanish can open a lot of doors on your travel adventures, like the Inca Trail, for example, which I'm sure I'm not the only one dreaming about right now. If you speak Spanish, you might be able to get your guide to be a little bit flexible with the rules and say something like, siempre quise dormir en la selva, which means, I always wanted to sleep in the jungle. I mean, why not? You could wind up with some far more interesting stories to tell. And speaking of stories, I actually teach Spanish and other languages through stories. So have a look in the video description if you'd like to find out more about that. Okay, enough talk of the Inca Trail. Language number 4 is a totally different kettle of fish, and that is Russian. Now, if you are smart enough to be a rocket scientist, then I'm talking to you right now. Did you know that if you want to be an astronaut at NASA, Russian is a mandatory subject? It's true, but this fascinating language is in high demand everywhere. Russian language specialists are sought after in the US government. You could also be a translator in the UN. Never mind the postgrad programs that are easier to get into if you know Russian, like law and medicine, for example. But even as a techie, knowing Russian will open up a lot of doors. Because after all, Russia is the biggest country in the world and the second most used language on the internet, online.
Всем привет! Меня зовут Анастасия Семина. Добро пожаловать на мой канал. Привет из Стамбула. Сегодня мой гость Эге. Привет, Эге.
Привет, Настя.
The really cool thing about Russian is that once you're proficient in it, you can easily understand other Slavic languages like Czech, Polish, or even Bulgarian. So those doors will just keep on opening with Russian. But how hard is it? Well, look, Russian has complex grammar and a wealth of consonants. So yes, it is hard, but that also means it's excellent for brain training and developing a super sharp mind. I clearly remember Dr. Barbara Oakley telling me about her exploits learning Russian while drinking vodka on Russian fishing trawlers in the North Sea. It's quite something. But now here's something that you weren't expecting. Russian could be a very tactical language to learn if you want to fall in love. At least for half of the population. Interestingly, Russia has far more women than men, and most of them don't speak English. So do with that nugget of information what you will. Now, if you plan to travel or work in Russia, then the no English thing gives you a very compelling reason to learn a bit of Russian before you go. Even if you can get to a basic level in Russian, your life there traveling will be a lot easier. Take road signs, for example. They're written in the Cyrillic script, and if you take a wrong turn in Russia, get on the wrong road, there's a long way to drive before you find a border. It could be a very long trip. Speaking of reading though, can you imagine reading Tolstoy in the original Russian? Or Lolita, or Russia's famous poets like Pushkin? Many say that Russian poetry is the most beautiful in the world. And for that matter, Russian opera is just incredible, especially if you can understand it. So as far as cultural reasons to learn a language go, Russian is right up there. And now for our 5th stellar language to learn. It is, number 5, Arabic. Could there be any language more exotic than Arabic? I used to live in the Middle East, and I can tell you that every time I hear the haunting sound of those Arabian wind instruments, I'm immediately transported back to the desert and the bustling streets. Arabic is a rich poetic language and a real treasure trove waiting to be discovered. Just as one example, Arabic has at least 11 words for love, and each describes a different stage of falling in love. And what about the sounds of Arabic? Well, Arabic has sounds that are non-existent in any other language, and that by itself is a wonderful reason to study it, because once your mouth has learned to make those completely new sounds, you'll have an easier time with pronunciation in other languages.
صباح الخير، أنا اسمي أولي، وأنا عايز أعمل فيديو صغير النهاردة علشان أنا بذاكر العربي من 6 شهور تقريبا.
Now you might be a bit worried about the Arabic alphabet, but actually it's quite straightforward. There are only 28 letters, which is really not too different from English. I think the Arabic challenge is worth it just for the pleasure of reading 1001 Nights. At least if you'd love to experience one of the greatest works of world literature ever. But there are way more reasons as well. For one, Arabic is a huge language. It's the 5th most spoken language in the world, the language of the entire Muslim civilization and all of its texts. And this is relevant to you Because, well, Arabic speakers from the West are in high demand. Think of your resume. You'll certainly get noticed if it says, I speak Arabic. For one, many Westerners want to work in Dubai, and the competition in Dubai is fierce, but speaking Arabic, although it's not essential to get you a job, will give you a huge advantage if you can speak it. And in some places, Arabic speakers make higher salaries too. And what about travel? I mean, you may not know this, but Arabs are masters in the art of hospitality and also incredibly proud of their language. And that means if you speak a little bit of Arabic, you will be on the receiving end of invitations that you can barely imagine. And I experienced this all over Egypt and the Middle East. Arabs, their generosity knows no bounds. They're kind to their guests, they will feed you. And lastly, let's not forget that knowing Arabic will also make it easier to learn some other languages as well, like Hebrew, Turkish, Urdu, and Farsi. And from a practical perspective, it's very easy to find talking partners, speaking partners as well, because Arabs are not at all shy and they're very keen to practice speaking English in particular. Now, you're not going to learn all 5 of these languages this year. Or are you? Well, if you watch this video, you might, because in this video I reveal 8 things that polyglots who learn lots of languages do to learn languages quickly. So if you're wondering how some people can learn tons of languages, then click this video over here and it will all be revealed. Just be careful of number 8 in that list, because that's only for the brave.